So as some of you know, we're the Association of Spanish Scientists in the US. We're a very big group, and we do this type of webinars and then a lot of events that I want to tell you about. And we are run exclusively by volunteers. We have 6 chapters at the moment, but mostly virtual right now, of course. This gives you a feeling of the diversity of places in which we're located and we work. These are current statistics based on like where are we, in what career path, and are we women or men? And then in the active members, so the people like us that we do the workshops, etc., then these are the faces that you will likely see in the future. And then we have several programs like the education program that goes to schools and then does a little bit of outreach. There's a new project for this. I'll give you the link and then you can start watching these videos for short experiments that you can do with your kids or like your nephews or whoever. And then the communication team does a brilliant job at sharing all that we do, but also does podcasts and interviews with us. And then I'm from the Career Development and Advisory Committee, and we do these workshops and panels, as you know, from academic and non-academic careers. We have 2 mentoring programs, and we collaborate with FECIT in another one. And then the advisory team does a lot of like welcome packages and guides, like how to return to Spain if you work in industry or if you work in academia, etc. Some things coming up. So the May 20th, we've got the 3rd session of the seed and soil cancer research. And then I'm gonna put you the link in the chat, how to join. And then also in May 15th and 22, we have a workshop about how, if you're a doctor, meaning a physician, how you can do your research career in US. And follow us for more info. And today we've got Dr. Laura Pirro with us. I'm really, really grateful, Laura, that you can join. It's 1 a.m. for Laura, so thank you so much.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Laura was born in Naples in the south of Italy. She studied there her bachelor's and master's degree. She's a chemical engineer. And she started working actually in industry and then went to academia to get her PhD at Ghent University in Belgium. And now she's back at industry. She's an R&D Ingeniera at Yara International. And Laura has always been interested in innovation and technologies and processes. And then that led her to the implementation of Agile Methodologies during her PhD. And that experience led her to write like a very interesting post in Nature Careers that we will put also the link that can give you like a startup point of like how to do Agile in research. And then also with us, we have Dr. Alejandro Martorell. Alex did his PhD in neurobiology at the University of Barcelona and then moved to UCLA in US for his postdoc in the lab of Alexander van der Vliek. And then he focused that on more like the mitochondrial involvement on neurological diseases and diabetes. And then he now works as a project management in biotech, and he has experience in a spin-off company from UCLA. He worked in Rakuten medical industry and now in Oncocyte. And so his experience as a product management and also his certification will help us like see like what are the real like applicabilities of these in industry. And finally, we have Adán Muñoz. Adán was born in a little town of Toledo. He studied telecommunication engineering in Madrid, and then he has a master's in logistics and supply chain management. He's also a certified SAFE Agilist, whatever that means. Adán is right now the head of digital transformation of MásMóvil Group in Spain, and he's one of the founders of BQ, which is an European smartphone designer and manufacturing company. He has 15 years experience working in many places like Hong Kong, China, UK, Vietnam, now in US and Spain. And he has curated his personal philosophy of always like improving and always like promoting and caring about his team members. And he takes advantage of new technologies to tackle all problems. So I'm really grateful to have him here for our discussion. And we're gonna start with a simple poll to see like who you are, guys, and then what do you want to get from this? So there are like only 2 questions, and then you can say, why are you here? And then where do you work, to give us more context. Okay, I'm gonna be closing in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so some of us have heard of Agile, but don't really know the specifics mainly. And then, someone can really explain Agile to us. And then we're mainly in academia, right? Yeah, so that's here for us. All right. So with that info, I'm gonna start with Adán. Do you wanna start us on what's Agile?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to talk about this because it's my mission in life is to help people improve in different ways, and Agile, I think it helps for that, right? When I started preparing for this webinar, I started researching about how to express better the values behind Agile. There are 4 values, and I thought that it was a good idea to put them in a way that show that they are very, very important. So I started researching and reading and designing, and came up with the idea to do like a building in which we have 4 columns. On the top we have the Agile, and then each column will be like one of the fundamentals. So I thought about every detail, that how the column should be, and how this slide could really show the importance of values. But I ran out of time, so I came up with this. So yeah, this is a problem because as you see, this says nothing really, and it doesn't add value to you, right? You don't get value from this. You don't get anything. So I came up with a plan B, and I did something like this. It's not as pretty as I thought. It's not as amazing probably, but it gives you value, and I managed to deliver what you needed, right? Which is to understand what are the Agile values. So this is a small example about how about what Agile is, right? To understand Agile, I don't want to use the word methodology because it's not exactly a methodology, because there are many different methodologies which are Agile. It's a set of values and principles which guide you in how to approach different problems, mainly project management and also work management in general, because you can also apply Agile methodologies in work, which is not exactly a project, right? A project has a start, has an end, and there are phases in between, and that's not it's not necessary for applying Agile even. So to try to explain what Agile is, I'm going to do it also comparing it with what was before Agile, if you want, which was waterfall. It's a different approach of project management. This is waterfall. In waterfall, what you have is the classic approach in which you have different phases. Normally, you start with gathering the requirements, what you need to do. Then you design what's the solution, what can you do to solve the problem that you're trying to resolve. Then you develop the solution, you test it, and then you deploy it, you deliver it, you put it in place, right? And at the end, you get the results, you get the value here. Agile, what proposes is a different approach in which you do different iterations in which you get value in each iteration. So there are small increments of value that in the end will give you the same value as in a waterfall approach or even more, but along the process you are getting value earlier, right? And this is important because in the end, life, I mean, the reality changes very, very fast. So if you spend a lot of time from the requirements to the deployment, maybe when you get here, the reality has changed, and then what you're going to deliver has no value, right? I'm talking always about value. Value is like a very abstract thing, right? But value is impact. Is a way of saying something that really changes something and is important to someone. Sorry, because this is even more abstract probably. But for example, adding value could be to improve a process, but also could be to create a product, or it depends on the context. Also, today we will see a more scientific or academia approach to this. So I guess we will get examples for value in that context. Not for me, probably, because I'm the only one who is not a doctor around, I guess. But I will try my best. I will try my best. So this
we
is
still
mainly...
like you, Adán.
Thank you.
We still like you. It's all right.
So this is a different example of waterfall versus agile, right? In here, as we said, you gather the requirements, design, then build and test. Then you come to the reality that you see that you didn't get a specific requirement that changes the way you should have designed, and then you have to build and test again. So when you get here, you have two options. You can come back, or you can deliver whatever you can deliver. And with an agile approach, what you do is that you get in each sprint. A sprint is like a phase. It's like each of one of these iterations I told you about. You get like a complete product. This product does less than this product, but you can play with the sun already in this phase, right? So these are the difference between waterfall and agile in a very, very, very zoom out, broad way. If we go to a more specific or detailed definition of this, agile comes from a group of software developers that in 2001 gathered, and they decided that they should write a manifesto about how they believed software should be done. So agile is designed from software development projects, but nowadays it's getting wider and wider, and we're using it in different contexts. Today, business agility, for example, is a concept that a lot of people use, and it's mainly that is trying to use the agile methodologies in other industries. This is what I do, for example, in MassMobile. We don't do just agile in the development teams. We do agile in other kind of teams. We do it in product teams, but also in business teams or in operations teams. So in the end, you can use it for everything, because they are not more than a set of 4 values and 12 principles, and that's it, right? And this is agile. If you if you just want to get out now of the webinar, it's okay. You just make a screenshot, you study this, and then you are an expert in agile. These are the 4 values, and these are the 12 principles. The values are that the individuals' interaction are more important than the processes and tools. This doesn't mean that this is not important. This column just means that this is more important. So the individuals' interactions are more important than the processes and tools. The working software or working whatever or value is more important than documentation, that the idea, the abstract idea about the value. The customer collaboration is more important than contract negotiation, and responding to change is more important than following a plan. Doesn't mean that agile means that you don't have a plan. No, you have a plan, but also you have within the methodology itself the mechanisms to be able to have flexibility upon changes in the context. So these are the values and these are the principles, and that's it. The principles, I don't want to go over all of them, because maybe this is not the idea. We can go over the one that you want. If you want, you have questions. But if you have to me, and this is a very personal view. If I have to stress the importance on some of this, it will be communication and flexibility. Adaptability. These are the 2 main things. Well, and also probably the ability to do reflection, the retrospective. So it's very, very important, the communications with everyone, with all of the stakeholders, with the teams, with all of the people around. It's very important to be flexible, to understand that that things change very, very fast, and you have to adapt, and then there's nothing you can do. You cannot. I mean, it's going to happen. The thing is, how are you going to approach that change? And also the reflection. The reflection means that from time to time, teams should reflect on how they work in order to see what works and what doesn't work, and change what doesn't work and consolidate what works. And that's it. Apart from this, which are the basics, there are different methodologies, specific methodologies like Scrum or Kanban or Scrumban or Scrum of Scrums or Extreme Programming, or there's a lot of different methodologies which are a set of tools and events that helps you put this into practice. But to me, that's not the important stuff. The important stuff is you understand this. Because at the end of the day, because you do reflection, if something doesn't work for you in a Scrum, for example, framework, if the daily meetings doesn't work for you, you change them, and then maybe you have to do them asynchronous, or maybe you don't have to do meetings at all, and you can communicate over something. So it depends a lot of the reality, and that's the power behind the Agile. That the important thing is that you adaptation. So Agile, and I will end with this. I think you don't have to mistake agility with velocity. This is not about doing things faster. This is about adapting faster, which is different. And yeah, that's pretty much it for what Agile is. Of course, if you have any questions or you want me to go deeper into something, would be nice. If not, I think Laura or Alejandro, I don't know who's going to talk now. Maybe you can land this into what does this mean in the academia context.
Yeah, sure. I was just wondering if our participants could just write in the chat, for example, their field of study, because we saw that we have graduate students, some PhD students, and postdocs, researchers at the university. And yeah, it would just be nice if you type in the chat what's your field, because, for example, I'm a chemical engineer. I'm not a software developer. I see here biology, genetics, astrophysics. So maybe some of us do work with software, but some of us don't. Some of us work with people because they're doctors. Some work with materials. I work with chemical reactors. So the whole point is, how can I translate what Adán told us? And he was great in summarizing a lot of things in a very short time, but it can still be overwhelming because, yeah, if I read the Agile principle, that working software, it's a core thing, but I don't do software. Okay, how can I work with that? So I see a lot of fields in the chat, but if you are a graduate student, you're a postdoc, probably there's a question.
Hi, hello. Sorry, there's a lot of echo here. I'm in the animal. I wanted to ask Adán before we move forward, because he said this Agile technology or tool was implemented translational throughout the entire company. I was thinking, is there something that unites all of the concepts into something more like a philosophy for Agile? Is there something behind that? It's just pure working philosophy behind it?
To me, that's Agile, and the other things are like ramifications, right? The specific methodologies. Agile itself, to me, is more a philosophy that other thing. It's like an approach to life, if you want. You can use Agile with your family.
But maybe we're like the 4 principles would be like applicable to everything, whereas right? The 4 values or whatever, and then the 12 principles is like for specific.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in philosophy, but probably, I don't know, the be water, my friend. These concepts, Asian concepts about adapt. Well, my camera just went crazy. So I guess it could be something like that. I don't know. To like some, I don't know. Agile to me is a philosophy.
Yeah, and actually, it's also, I would say, a lot of common sense, but put into a structure. Some things after you hear it, it becomes obvious. But until you hear it and until you find a way to do it, it's not that obvious. For example, that having continuous feedbacks throughout the whole stages of the work is very important. It can be much more important than having feedback just at the very end. Well, it makes sense. It's obvious. But if you don't do that, it doesn't work. You still have to do that. Doesn't matter how obvious that is. So indeed, I like that you said it's not, I don't want to talk about a methodology, even though there are methodologies and tools and frameworks, but it's a way of living. So yeah, that was nice. But it still brings us back, how can we do that in research? And even in research, you have products. Whatever research you are doing, typically, even though it's a pity that we have to summarize like this, the product is a paper that you want to submit to a journal and publish somewhere nice. It's an abstract which gets to a very nice conference and it gives you visibility. These are products. In some other cases, it could really be a working prototype of something. It could be a new drug. It could be it could be software for some people or a patent, but we all need to deliver, because doing research and then keep it in our desk or in our lab and not bringing it out, it's not useful. It's not how we do it. So whatever thing you're doing, you will have a product. And the most general is a paper if you are trying to get your PhD, or it could be something else. So here we see a lot of different fields in the chat, and I'm sure each one of you can think of a product to deliver. And having a working product, meaning having something tangible as early as possible in the stages of your PhD or your research or your project, it's something you can think of. Something simple, you want to go to a conference, it's months from now, you don't even have the results, so there's nothing to put there. But when you start getting the results, what you could do is start putting them already into the slides, and you don't know that, but you're actually creating your product from day one, and that program will be constantly be enriched. It will not just be, I will collect a lot of data, folders, and then the week before the conference I will rush into making a presentation, which maybe will not be the best possible because I'm out of time, like Adán with his temple before. And maybe throughout the 6 months before the conference, you will go to your PI every time with slides, and those slides will look more and more similar to the final presentation you will give, even though at the beginning you didn't have any results. And by doing that, you will start getting feedback much earlier and avoid that situation. We have all been in that situation. You think you've made the best thing possible, the best paper, the best presentation, work on it super hard, and then you get there and I had something else in mind. No, it's not possible. Communication has to be clear from day one. So what Adán was saying, communication, flexibility, yes, but communication even more important, because we need to agree on what we're going to do. We need to agree on what we're going to write or what we're going to present. So I just put together a lot of examples which are very transversal in many research fields. You can think of that as an engineer, an astrophysics, or biophysics, but you still face these problems. The thing is, the team. I think that's one of the biggest issues I've encountered, and many of the people I've talked to have encountered. When you talk to project managers and people who work Agile, they always have this idea of the team. And if you're doing Scrum, you even have some dedicated roles in the team, and you hear these words, product owner, scrum master, etc. But when you are doing your research, many times it feels like the team is just you. And then, yeah, who is the team? And so probably that's the first thing you need to understand to start working Agile. Because let's say you read 10 books on Agile and you become a specialist, but they all talk about teamwork and you feel you don't have a team. There's nothing to do. So, well, there are things you can do to make your own life more agile, but to make your project, identifying your team is the first thing. So in my case, okay, it was quite easy because my PhD had a lot of structure. I had 2 PIs, one more junior, one more senior. At a later stage, a postdoc came in the group and we started collaborating. So I put him in the team bubble. I had the opportunity of coaching some master students who were undergraduates at the time. So the team got enriched because every year I had 1 or 2 students to work with. And then there was even a company who had financed part of my PhD. So I even had an industrial partner. So in my case, the team really felt like a team. Sometimes the team might just be you and your PI. It's becoming more rare because there are more interdisciplinary projects. Mostly you start having double PIs and etc. But even if it's just you and your PI, you should start working as a team because you need commitment from both sides. It's very difficult to make Agile on your own. There are some things which work even on your own. Maybe some of you heard about it. Kanban, the Kanban board, which is like a sort of evolved way of having a to-do list to keep it super simple, because there's much more behind that. But visualizing your work in what you are doing now, what you have to do and what you have done, and making sure that what you're doing now, it's minimized, it does not exceed your capacity, and you don't start something new if you have not finished something else. These kind of small things, you could do that even by your own. But if you really want to work Agile on a project, at least that's my feeling, and if Adán or Alejandro or anybody else in the audience has a different opinion, I'm happy to hear it. You need commitment from the team, even if it's just your supervisor. And that's the first step you could start doing already tonight in bed. Okay, who's my team? Who are the people, if I want to introduce some agility and some flexibility and interactions, who are the people I need to get on board? And I will keep it short because I really hope there are questions, even though there's a lot to talk about. But the other, I will anticipate one of the questions because I get it all the times. How can I get my team on board? If my team is my supervisor or somebody else, how can I involve them? Because especially there are many academic people here, and sometimes it's just difficult to find the time to talk to your professor and to persuade him of changing the way of working. Maybe that person has been working like that for 20 years and doesn't even see the need for something new. And every case is different, but then the best tip I can give you is start small, because that's what I did with my professor, and it worked quite all right. Meaning that I didn't bring Agile to him, I didn't bring Scrum and sprints, etc. I just asked him, instead of having 1 meeting per month or 1 hour, can we have 4 meetings per month, 1 per week, of 15 minutes? Because I knew he could not say no. I'm asking you exactly the same amount of time. I'm just splitting it in 4, and I'm putting it even in time slots which are more convenient for you. So I was sure there was no reason to say no. And he accepted that. I'm lucky that he was responsive. He accepted. I said, okay, but why? Why would you do that? Because the problem with my monthly meeting was that I spent the first half an hour making a recap of what we discussed a month ago. And then I only had half an hour to go through all the results, but also all the issues of the month and all the planning. And I realized that if I split it in 4 shorter meetings, which were much more focused on, okay, I'm doing this, I want to do that. Do you agree? That was also one of the questions. And I'm having this issue. Could you help with that? That was a game changer for me. And then when we proposed to extend it to the other 12 students, they all tried. And my professor, who didn't seem to have 12 hours per month for everybody, actually found 15 minutes per week for everybody. So that was just my experience, but I talked to many people who had to find those tricks and maybe bring a Kanban board to your professor, but not say it's a Kanban board. Let's say I made a table with the work I'm doing, the work I've done, and the work I'm gonna do. And maybe you make it colorful, fake post-its, and your professor might like it. And then maybe later you can say, it's a Kanban board to visualize my workflow, etc. So that's just something I wanted to say because it pops up every time. It's difficult to get people on board, but there are tricks. And so with this, I leave some space also to Alejandro, but I would be happy to talk more with you in the audience if you have questions.
Yeah, this was great. And I want to start saying that thanks to Marina for inviting me to this webinar. I think that everything we heard so far from Adán and Laura is actually, those are the points to touch here. And I have to be frank, I never applied Agile in my life. I know about it. I read the Scrum book, etc. But I push my career more to PMP, which is the project management professional, which works with waterfall, Gantt charts, which is a little bit like the antagonist of Agile. But applying the Agile principles and methodologies, it's something that we all try to do somehow, especially if you know and understand the values that it come attached to it. Coming from academia, I joined industry like 2 to 3 years ago. I've been in 3 companies so far. Recently moved here to Oncocyte in Irvine, California. And the experience it's always been the same. It's in industry, they work in a very different setting, right? Compared to academia. Academia is mostly like almost every day or every week, the focus is changing. Based on the results you get yesterday, your PI had some nightmares during the night, brainstorming. He or she was taking a shower and hit his head or something, and then the next morning comes to the lab and saying, "Oh, you know what? Let's change this. Forget about splitting cells today. Don't go to the microscope. Forget about the PCR. Start checking by Western blot this signal, oh, whatever. Or go to the fax instead." So that changed the whole thing. And maybe for nothing, because 1 or 2 weeks later, he or she hits his head again and come back to the previous plan. Like, "Oh, what about that PCR microscope? Hey, wait, you told me to change the paradigm." So that's at least that's my experience in how it was in academia. And I think that a lot of people agree on that, especially in the broad field of biomedicine, right? And pathology research. Industries, it's a very different setting, and it's very worth it, like, to be try to find those industries that have the PM, the project manager, like in high esteem. Like, they love the PM. They want to have a project manager side to side to work with. I found both things so far. Like actually, my previous job, my previous company, I never got the proper endorsement from the CSO, the Chief Scientific Officer from the company, to be able to help the scientists to track their activities and be able to create teams, create timelines, to find deliveries, get to objectives, milestones, etc. I try it, but of course, why the scientists are going to follow my command, which one of the things that you learn, first things you learn in project management, and you're no one's boss. You have no authority above anyone. You're one more of the team, and you have to look at yourself as one more of the team. You're within the team. You're try to be like this glue between people, between departments, work together. If people don't have the whole overview of the whole scope, they rely on the project manager to provide that visibility. Good thing for me, this company where I'm right now, they look at us as we are like the Pandora box. Like without us, they cannot perform, they cannot advance. And this is amazing, but it facilitates my work a lot. One of the questions that Marina shared with us, that I think it touches like my duties, daily duties, like a lot, is how you balance, right, your time as a project manager, preparing and updating workflows versus actually executing work. My answer to that would be like, and it's a lot of struggling, obviously. Like my first thing when I get into the office, I have my MS projects open, and I start working on them, start checking if I have to update something, with who I have to talk, who I have to reach to collect information. It's a lot of time, obviously. So what I would say here is like the people who executes, it's not you in most of the cases. Those are the rest teammates of your team. You are the one keeping the things hopefully in order, keeping the people together, sharing information. Communication is one of the words that has been shared the most so far by Adán and Laura, and this is essential. As a project manager, everything has to be fluent, the whole communication pathway and channel. So you plan, you check, while others execute. To apply all this in academia, since most people here is in academia, and coming after my PhD and postdoc, is what I was telling Laura and Adán and Marina earlier. Like if I try to think of all the PIs that I ever met, who would be willingly to accept to work with Agile values, I don't think I can come with a name that or a person who will be open to do it. But the advices that Laura provides here, I think they're key. I think that those are like amazing approaches how to little by little bring your PI and the rest of the team to the same page as you, and to try to implement Agile ideas and methodologies.
Yeah. In my company, for example, it's a different approach because I'm in an office, a transformation office, and we go to different teams to help them modify their methodology, their ways of working, as we call them. And it's even more difficult in the sense that you're not part of the team. So you go to a place and you see how they work, and you say, okay, you have to change. And that's why we normally start with quick wins, as we call them. Like you go there and you ask what hurts, what's something that you know that needs improvement, and then we go from there. So that's also one more approach that you can use. That if you know your PI struggles with something specifically, like I don't know, with communication, with knowing what's going on with something, I don't know. Maybe you can help. You can propose one of the tools within the Agile scope and trying to do that. But Laura, I loved your approach. I think it's very
yeah. Good. No, I just put the link in the chat. It's the link to a blog from Ole Bergman. He's a journalist and he has a lot of interests, and he also made a blog which is called Agile Science. And there are not a lot of articles there, but each article is really golden. So if you're interested in examples of Agile science, That's a good starting point. And I put it there because the last example he gave was actually a group of people in Brussels that I was working with. So the story was, Ole asked me, can we have an interview? And I put it on the blog. I said, okay. But then it turned into, can you write a piece for the blog? And I was going to submit my thesis. So I said, look, I don't have time for this, but I will redirect you to one of the people I worked with. He's the guy. And this guy is Benjamin Berger. And that's the interview to him. And he explains how he turned a first-year bachelor course in engineering, where they do a project. We had a lot of discussions. How can we make it more agile, etc. And you can read that a bit about that. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you about Benjamin is because I think Benjamin is a very good example of a very good PI. He's also quite young, Alejandro, so it goes in the direction you were saying, that new generation PIs. But he wanted to try new things. And at the end of this interview, I will read it. He said, if I could just add one more thing, it is something one teacher once said to me: do not hesitate to try new learning methods. Even if the students do not learn anything new, you will. So when I read this sentence, which now I'm pasting in the chat, I felt really good. I felt really hopeful, because there were already a lot of professors and PIs that I had talked to and worked with, but nobody had expressed it so well. So I'm slightly less pessimistic, let's say. I've already seen quite some examples of even professors who want to change. For me, approaching Agile was the need of a PhD student, was the need of a student who was going through a very hard time. And it happens to all of us during our research. And I needed something to make it better. And I've been approached by a lot of students. But the fact that I've also been approached by some PIs, it's a good sign. It means there are people who see that something can be improved. And in Europe, for example, now when you write proposals for funding, they ask you to put a Gantt chart there, So now we are advocating Agile. Gantt chart is not Agile, but that means something. It means that the European Commission and the professors, they understood that you need to have a plan, more or less. Now, what I'm trying to convince the world about is that you need an Agile plan. You cannot fix your scope in stone if you're doing research, because research is always new. It's always risky. It's always pushing the boundaries. So there's no way you can write the scope in stone. But anyway, they realized you need a plan. And now they oblige you to put a Gantt chart. Fine. But what they are obliging you to do is actually think about how you can manage your research. And now they want a Gantt chart, fine, but they also want you to think a research project is a project, and as any project, you need to manage it, you need to handle it. Think about how you can do it efficiently. So this is also a good sign that this kind of change is needed in the way of working, even in university.
I invite you all to just unmute yourself and continue the conversation. I'm just gonna ask briefly, to all of you, if you wanted to start with something small, like having different type of schedules with your PI, for example, or would you do it for a particular project that you think is easy to adapt, for example, writing a manuscript? Could you do it more agile to start with, to try how do you work with it, or would you do it with something else?
All right. Is this a question to our audience?
Yeah, I think.
No, to you guys.
Okay.
if you want to do an agile project that is simple and small, would you do it writing a manuscript, or I don't know?
It depends on the person, right? Whatever you need at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe
for example,
you talk.
Yeah.
I think that by chatting is a better way and direct way to communicate rather than writing it down.
No. I think Marina meant that what's our recommendation to start with trying to apply Agile, right? In which kind of project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe your own research is too big for trying a few things, but maybe you need to write a manuscript or you need to like do a poster, and then you can start with that small thing.
Yeah. But the manuscript, the poster, they're good examples because normally you are in charge. Let's say it's never completely in your control, but the writing part, if you already have the results, it's in your control. And since you can be really the manager, it's funny, Alejandro said, yeah, the project manager doesn't really execute the work. It's more planning, checking, updating. But if you have to do that as a graduate student, as a researcher in university, you also have to execute the
every
work.
role.
Yeah.
There's no roles.
You have to do everything.
Yeah.
And so on many things, you depend on others. But on the writing itself, you depend on you. You depend on your PI, on the feedback, on the revisions. But when we write a manuscript, let's say we also do it with a structure. We might say we write the results first, and then we write the conclusions, and then the methodology and the introduction at the end. Fine. And then we write everything, and it goes to our PI. If you wanted to make it agile, what you could do is write it all together. Obviously, if you want to do that in one day, you need to do it in bullet points. You put a tentative title, a tentative structure, some key bullet points, and you can even draw by hand the figures that you have in mind. But then it would be important that you go with this skeleton to your PI and ask your PI, I need 5 minutes of your time. Can you have a look at this before I proceed? Just to see, is that the manuscript we want to write? Fine. Okay, this part you would do different. Let's say you would have discussion separate from results. Okay, great. Take a feedback, go back, and you start enriching your manuscript. You add some references, you add the real results, you put captions and so on. And then maybe next time you ask your PI 10 minutes of the time to say, okay, that's my status right now, and that's how it's going to look like. What do you think? And then total, you have stolen 50 minutes from your PI, but you have already gotten feedback 2 times. And the truth is, if you only wrote the results, it would not be a manuscript you can submit, of course. And if you would only write bullet points, it's also a manuscript you can submit. You have to go to the very end. And in terms of time, it might take you the same time. As Adán would say, it's not about being faster, but it's really about being flexible and smarter. Because with the skeleton structure, and if your PI had the feedback, you could insert it at any moment. But if you first write everything by yourself and go only at the very end, yeah, that's where problems can arise. So it was a very good suggestion, at least in my experience, Marina, to start from things which are a bit more in your control, such as the writing part.
And so I know that there's like a lot of terms like Kanban, Scrum, sprints, and all these things. And then, so for example, in the register, someone was asking like, oh, okay, so what's the difference between Agile and other product management or project management tools that we've heard before, like Prince2 or Six Sigma? Is Agile more applicable to science than these two?
Six Sigma and Prince2 are, or ETIL or PMP, for example, there are different methodologies as well. For example, Six Sigma and Prince2 are very focused on continual improvement of processes instead of a way of to take different projects, like very different projects in which you have to adapt to new scenarios. Six Sigma and Prince2 are more thought for example, industrial environments in which you have already a process in place and you have to do continual improvement, which is small improvements, constant small improvements. Like you are not doing radical different things every time. You are going to step by step improving, like the small bits. And with Agile is a way of approaching projects with high uncertainty. So you don't know exactly what's coming to you, and then you have to adapt to that. That's the difference mainly. I'm not an expert in Six Sigma or PMP or ETIL or Prince2 or any of those, but yeah, that's the main, I think, the main difference.
Yeah, my understanding with Six Sigma is that it's very focused on the level of quality that you develop and perform. at the end. The result, the quality attached to your result. So depending if Six Sigma is the highest, meaning that, for example, if you are a manufacturer, you're manufacturing a truck. At the end, it's like 99.6% of everything that comes out of your manufacturing has to look identically the same performance, same quality, everything the same. So Six Sigma is well used in manufacturing, for example, or long change of creation. Obviously not just pharma, it could be anything like cars, refrigerators, whatever.
Another thing, like now we've talked a bit about the fight of like having to convince your PI or your boss to like apply Agile. But what if like you're transitioning and then suddenly you're going to be the boss, you're going to start your new lab or your new project? What sort of things would you apply from the beginning that are more Agile?
I will start with communication. I will said I will start, for example, if I were a PI, I will have a daily with everyone in the lab, 15 minutes. I will talk with everyone. I will not wait for a weekly meeting in which someone will present something. I will go for a daily in which everyone will say very, very fast what has been done the day before and what's going to do that day. And most of the time will be, okay, the same thing as yesterday. But that allows you to have a place in which whenever you really need it, you can communicate and you can say something's blocking you or you need help or whatever. And also visualizing work, because I don't have a lot of experience. I don't know how to be a PA, of course, but what I've seen from my experience with friends and family that are in research, I see that the work is not very. I mean, it's very lonely. And you have all of your information in your lab book, and then you write everything there, but you don't really have the work share. You have to wait for someone to explain to you what they're doing instead of going to a place and see the work visualized. So I will start with those two things.
Yeah, and I think that one of the last words you mentioned is actually the visualize. That's so key. And that's a problem that we see in academia because of the lab books, right? Like notebooks. We are always like taking notes, how we perform the protocol. We spend a lot of hours updating these notebooks. But for planning and executing, I think that visualizing, having the plan on a table to show what we want to achieve, where are we going, and what we have to do step by step to reach that objective. That's key.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know if it's true for every discipline. It's probably true for engineering, and if it's true for engineering, that's a high chance that it's true also for other disciplines. One thing I would try to change, maybe even more upstream, is to educate students in their last years or even before they start a graduate program a bit about these soft transversal skills. We always talk about that, but managing your time, managing stress, managing communication, it's all stuff that you only learn with experience. You really, really learn just when you experience it. So you just need to wait till you get older. But reading about it, studying about it, having somebody explaining you these things before you face the problem can help you when you actually face it. So to teach a bit of project management before you even start your research project, it just makes sense. It's a project. You need to manage it. We will teach you small things. And having crash course on communication and how to be effective in communication in few minutes, because sometimes that's all you get. I like Adán's idealistic view of this PI chatting 50 minutes per day with all the students. And I would love that. But if I think of, you might have 10, 12 students, and you might have to teach classes at your institution, at foreign institutions, write proposals to get funds, and travel to conferences. And so when in the pre-corona time, maybe half of the time you were not even there. So sometimes you get 5 minutes, and also learning how to say what you want to say in 5 minutes is something that, yeah, it takes a bit of training. So I would just say teaching some transversal skills that can make you tougher for the journey you have ahead is something I would start even earlier, even before the real PhD projects, etc.
Alma, what do you mean by protocols? Like our research protocols about how to do a Western or how to do?
Yeah, lab protocols in general. Like other people can use them and learn from your knowledge.
So if that's agile,
yeah. I think that's an agile approach.
Yeah, so having like a structured way, and then people, if they experience something in this protocol, they would add or actually put the concentration to blah, blah, blah. So a live document, not like the protocols that we normally have printed on paper.
Yeah, okay. Like they are live. Like they can be iterated.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know that much about protocols to answer to this properly, but I guess if it's something that it's like a process that you follow in the lab and it can be improved in iterations, if you treat a protocol as a product, as Laura said before, then yeah, you can apply Agile for sure. But it will be not by itself because it's a process. It's Agile. It should be how you approach that. As Marina said, like if you share it, if you really iterate, if you reflect on if it's working or not, if you measure what matters, all of that makes the iteration process over protocol Agile.
We have 2 more minutes, so if there's like bullet points that we haven't. Oh, Ignacio, do you want to share something? Go ahead, quickly.
Hi, hello. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to. I mean, if you want to close, that's fine. I got most of what I wanted to get from this, but I guess I was going to ask what's next. So I think I understood the philosophy now. I didn't know much about Agile. I really like the examples, the ones for the academia, the papers and all that. I can apply that to my case. I can also see the software, modular, start simple, and then improve those modules. And even though, I mean, that's how I visualize this. So I want to understand what's next. So is it about really getting into the philosophy, absorbing it and living by it? Or is it about the techniques that are in the books that you have to read? And I mean, how do we move from here? Is it about absorbing that principle and applying to every aspect of our work? Or is there more to it about with the tools? I mean, should we go and find those tools that are going to be helpful in specific cases?
That would probably be the first step, right? If you want to be the instigator to adapt and start implementing Agile or whatever other methodologies to your work, your team, your people, you will need to most probably train yourself first, understand how it works, understand what has to be done, so you can be able to share it and start implementing.
So I think it's a bit of both to me. I mean, just as Laura said at the beginning, if you apply common sense, that would be awesome. If you always apply common sense, that will just that will put you on top 10% of the people already. And on top of that, if you detect what's not working, and then you try to find the tool that helps you solve that specific problem, and on all of the tools that you have that are agile, like, I don't know, value stream mapping or CPOC, or I don't know, there's a lot of different specific, very, very specific tools that can be used to map a process or to do some ideation event in which you can come up with brainstormings or mind mappings, or Those of all of those tools can help you to solve specific problems. You can learn about them a priori, but maybe it's better if you just apply common sense, and whenever you come up to a problem, you try to find the specific tool and learn about it.
Yeah.
But of course, learning that doesn't hurt. So
no. And the only thing is, right now we and you in the audience, because you're interested, we're still pioneers in this for research, for university. So the only risk, I read a lot, but I never found examples that were really similar to what I needed. And you will not find it. Maybe in 10 years, in 15 years, when everybody starts doing it, you will find it. So a combination of what Alejandro said, yes, reading about how it's done in other industries, but then searching for examples that are applicable to your life. For example, in the chat, I didn't put you a link to technical books, even though I read a couple, okay, to understand. I put you some links to examples, because hopefully you can take inspiration from there, apply a bit of common sense, and then you read some technicalities somewhere else, and you create your own flexible, agile world.
Connect the dots and
try to connect from different pieces.
And that's so relevant, because in my experience, when you put people in the same room and just to chat, some or most of the times key messages get lost within the conversations. So it's very important, for example, basic methodologies of taking notes, right? Taking minutes and sharing action items to be performed before the next meeting. And what solves a lot of questions always and helps people to understand where they are is to show whatever you're using. If you're using Kanban, if you're using Gantt, whatever it is, show it. Let people see where you are in time. When is the next deliverable deadline coming? The next objectives, next milestones, and let people understand, like, oosh, I understand the process to get there, and I see that the time it's a constraint, or I see that if I don't perform this protocol, I don't get these results, I don't order these cells, I'm not gonna get them here in time to let them grow, to split them, to go to the microscope, etc. This is all time consuming. So the critical path, right? So having a master plan, a workflow, and show it to the people, and have meetings with this in the background. It could be also like a whiteboard in your wall. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to have to be a tool per se, a software tool, which in my opinion would be the best, but because everyone can play with it and introduce information. But if you cannot have that, have it in the wall of your board, in a board on your wall, in your office, and keep that in mind always when you meet with the rest of the teammates.
Thank you all. I mean, we're way out of time. Laura, you need to go to bed. Any last minute things that you guys want to share with us? I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Ignacio made a very, very good summary. I think he summarized.
Yeah, it was the perfect question to close.
Awesome.
What's next? And yeah, let's hope each one of you can find their own way, even if it's not agile. Even if it's a Gantt chart. If it works for you, it's fine. That's the thing. Thanks again for the invitation, Marina. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all. I know that it's very new to a lot of people, so thank you for the introduction, trying to keep it brief and giving a lot of resources in the chat. Tomorrow, I'll send all these links and Laura's information and the video to all of you, and then all the people that are actually in Europe and couldn't connect, and they're not as passionate as Laura staying at 2 a.m.
I'm wearing my pajama underneath, so
yeah, feel free to share our emails or LinkedIn or whatever.
Sure,
if
I'll
people
do
wants
that
to
as
reach
well.
out. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.